Hello everyone. So today we are covering chapter 20, that is optimal taxations. So in the starting of this chapter we will talk about two fallacies of optimal taxation. Fallacies होती हैं like जो wrong ideas or belief हमारे like established होते हैं, we call it fallacies. So there are two such fallacies about the optimal taxation. First one was fallacy of counting distortions. So basically इसमें क्या था कि they believe that only one tax like income tax or wage tax is better because more taxes will create more distortions. So this was the idea that having only one tax is better. If we have more than one taxes, it will create more complexity, more distortions, like more taxes can be on like commodities or savings, etc. So the wrong idea, belief, or fallacy was that one distortion is better than several distortions. But we are calling it a fallacy. So why is it a fallacy? Because we have seen that just having one big tax is not always efficient. Many small taxes can sometimes create less harm than one large tax because the burdens get spread out. So eventually, like, we don't have to go into much depth of it right now. So just keep in mind that it is not always good, or that having only one big tax is always efficient. Sometimes what happens, if we have many like small taxes, they can create less harm than one large tax because burdens kind of get spread out. And the second fallacy is the misinterpretations of the theory of second best. So here it is, like, if some distortions exist, then economic theory cannot help us, or removing distortions always makes things better. So it was the idea कि अगर हमारे like if we have some kind of distortions, if some kind of distortions exist, then our economic theory cannot help us, like it cannot explain things, or the second part of it is like removing distortions will make things better. So मतलब आइडिया ये था कि डिस्टॉर्शंस को इन अ वेरी नेगेटिव सेंस में देखा जाता था, लाइक इफ देयर इज अ डिस्टॉर्शन एग्जिस्ट देन इकोनॉमिक थ्योरी कैन नॉट हेल्प अस टू मेक अंडरस्टैंड many concepts, many things. But one distortions cannot be removed. Removing others may not improve the economy. So basically think that it is not always a good idea. We cannot be sure that if we just remove the distortions, then our economy will be improved, or we can explain more things. Actually, like if we like think carefully, then sometimes keeping or adding a small distortions may work better than blindly trying to remove all distortions. So these are two fallacies that we talk about. So just keep in mind like the brief idea of it, what it is about, and this would be enough. So like just mug it up. And the the things which we will discuss here is optimal and Pareto efficient taxations. So first, you must have heard about the term this Pareto efficient allocations a lot, like so far if you are studying economics. So what is Pareto efficient allocation? It is that allocations like if no one could be better off without making someone else worse off. It means like a person is at that resource set, or is at that positions where he is like he cannot be make himself better off without making other worse off. That is what we call Pareto efficient allocations. And similarly, that what we could say for the resources or for other things, we can have Pareto efficient tax structure. It is set to a one tax structure, like for which like there exist no alternative tax structures that can make some individual better off without making other individual worse off. Same. And the thing is that like it is not like there is only one unique Pareto efficient allocation or tax structure. There can be many Pareto efficient tax structures. Like if you are two friends, that your Pareto efficient would be different from the other person. So there can be many Pareto efficient tax structure, but we need to choose one such Pareto efficient structures. How we use one Pareto efficient structures, and basically this one Pareto efficient structure we would choose, we will call this optimal, optimal tax structure. And how we choose it? We choose a tax structure as a optimal tax structure which could which could maximize social welfare. तो बेसिकली हमारा जो ऑप्टिमल टैक्स स्ट्रक्चर वो टैक्स स्ट्रक्चर होता है जो हमारे सोशल वेलफेयर को मैक्सिमाइज कर देता है. ओके, अमंग बहुत सारे जो अवेलेबल पैरेटो एफिशिएंट टैक्स स्ट्रक्चर्स हैं उनमें से. सो इसको हम समझ सकते हैं एज एन एनोमली. जैसे हमने पढ़ा था इन द केस ऑफ रिसोर्स एलोकेशन, लाइक वी यूज टू हैव अ दिस बेसिकली ग्राफ यू आर सीइंग is it's contain of a different Pareto efficient points. ठीक है, and this graph which is looking like a indifference curve is representing social welfare function. So when both these are interacting at this tangential position is representing the optimal resource allocation. So similar in the similar way we find out the optimal tax structure where we are maximizing the social welfare. Now we need to like note or keep think about that, like we can have different social welfare functions. Okay, and those social welfare functions, like different social welfare functions will give different optimal tax structures. Like if you would have like remember few like this used to be our combination of Pareto efficient points, and we used to have different social welfare function. One was like that, like this, where this is the optimal, and one was like this, this was the social welfare, this is the optimal. One was one was like this, right? This is the optimal. So similarly, like different social welfare functions will give different optimal tax structures. And the one example which is mentioned in our text is the Rawlsian social welfare function. And why it is important, like why we are taking this example out here, because this social welfare function reflects a greater concern for equality. So basically it vouch for more progressive tax structure. ये बोलता है कि like rich should bear a larger fraction of the burden for paying for public goods. Okay, like it's more inclined toward the equalitarian idea of the distribution of income, that the poor should get more, should be rewarded with more lump sum grant, or rich should bear a larger fraction of the burden, or should bear higher taxes. Now we look at what is the objective of optimal tax theory. So our main idea basically is that we wanted to determine whether there are some general properties of all Pareto efficient tax systems are not, like properties that hold regardless of the social welfare functions. So we just mentioned कि हमारे different social welfare functions होते हैं, they give different optimal tax structures. बट वॉट इफ़ हम कुछ जनरल प्रॉपर्टीज़ को फाइंड आउट करना चाहते हैं दैट कुड बी अप्लाइड रिगार्डलेस ऑफ वॉट काइंड ऑफ सोशल वेलफेयर फंक्शन वी आर यूजिंग. सो दीज प्रॉपर्टीज़ लाइक वुड बी बेसिक प्रिंसिपल्स जो हम अप्लाई कर सकते हैं इन एनी काइंड ऑफ सोशल वेलफेयर फंक्शन सेटिंग्स में. सो वी वॉन्टेड टू फाइंड दिस आउट. So this we have seen that, just for a recap, I taken this from the text, that Pareto efficient and optimal taxation. So Pareto efficient tax structure is one such that there exists no other tax structures that can make some individuals better off without making others worse off. This what we have just discussed. And optimal tax structure given a particular social welfare function is the Pareto efficient tax structure that maximizes social welfare function. Like what we have just like okay. And the next thing we're talking about is lump sum taxes. So first of all, we will see that what lump sum taxes is. Like these are the equal taxes from all individuals. So lump sum taxes are those taxes like which people's pay a equal amount regardless of the income level. So it doesn't matter if I'm earning 20,000 a month, or 1 lakh a month, or 2 lakh a month. I would have to pay a certain amount. Like, let's say I have to pay 20,000 per month, regardless of what my income is. It's called lump sum taxes. And let's say there are lump sum taxes. So when government would do this, when government could apply lump sum taxes and can say that, we have created a kind of a tax structure which could which is efficient, as well as, taking care of the equity in the society. It is applicable, like, if we think a scenario where all individuals are identicals, and therefore we treat it for tax this is identically. मतलब हम एक ऐसी सिचुएशन ले रहे हैं सोसाइटी में जहाँ पे सारे इंडिविजुअल्स आइडेंटिकल हैं, आइडेंटिकल इन द सेंस लाइक दे आर काइंड ऑफ अर्निंग सेम काइंड ऑफ इनकम्स, और दे हैव सेम काइंड ऑफ बिहेवियर or expenditure kind of a thing. So we are saying that, okay, therefore we can treat it them identically. Like for taxes, we can like levy a fixed amount, same amount of taxes from every individuals. So in this case, any other taxes would create distortion. Obviously, like if we are proportional taxes and all, it would create destruction in the sense that if all people are earning 20,000 a month, but if we are like kind of asking each individual's different amount of money to pay, like one individual has to pay 5,000, another has 10,000, and so on, and each one have equal incomes, then the one who is paying higher taxes would be worse off. Like it would create a lot of distortions in the society. So this would be the most identical scenario, or the taxes structure we could design in a scenario, where individuals are identical to each other. And therefore government also could raise the equal same amount of revenue and make each individual better off, because here all individuals are becoming better off. So there is no need as such to redistribute income. When a government redistribute income, government actually go for redistribution of income when the government felt that there is a inequality in income, right? Then only government goes for progressive taxation and all, जहाँ पे कि government charges high taxes from higher income individuals and lower from low income individuals, and kind of pay lower income individuals out of their tax. This way the government kind of redistribute the income. But if all individuals are equals, if all are earning same amount of incomes, then there is no need for the redistribution. So in such cases, lump sum tax would be both efficient as well as equitable if all individuals are identical. But if we look into the real world is much more complicated. Individuals differ here. Like individuals are not same kind of peoples with the same abilities to pay taxes, or have the same abilities to earn income, same amount of income. So there our government comes to kind of like, government wish to redistribute income because of the inequality already exist in the society among individuals, whether it would be their ability to pay taxes, their ability to earn, and all of other things like expenditure, behavior, and all. So now the question is, why we impose distortionary taxes. So we have seen kind of where we can get in a background or idea why do we so in such a manner, because our society is not ideal, everybody is not identical. So lump sum tax would not create the best outcomes, like they won't be efficient or equitable, which like they would if all individuals were identical. So therefore we kind of cannot make a tax structure which is free of all kind of distortion. So distortions become kind of inevitable in cases. What is distortionary taxes for a sense, like just to give you an idea? So taxes that changes people's behavior, creating economic inefficiency by discouraging activities like working, saving, or investing. Similarly, ऐसे टैक्सेस जो हमारे जो बिहेवियर है, इंडिविजुअल बिहेवियर को डिस्टॉर्ट या डिस्टर्ब करते हैं इन अ वे, लाइक it could be like अगर हमारे पास like if we have to pay higher taxes, it kind of discourages, de-incentivizes individuals to not work. to prefer more leisure over work. So these kind of behavior kind of come up because of these taxes. That's why these are called distortionary taxes. So if government has a perfect we are kind of a taking an idea or scenario, like if government has a perfect information about the ability of persons to pay taxes, then there was no need for distortionary taxes, because government can simply tax a lump sum amount from high ability individuals who could pay high, and things would be perfect. But government do not have a perfect information. Government have a imperfect information about abilities, and those imperfect information are also from the observable variables or observable characteristic जो government देख सकती है and observe कर सकती है. This include your income level हो गया और expenditure level हो गया according to that. But that also in a way doesn't tells about the individuals, like the real original abilities. It could hide many informations, or it could depend on different situations. So therefore the distortions become inevitable. So the use of distortionary taxes is thus an inevitable consequence of our desire to redistribute income in a world in which the government can observe the characteristic like observable variables, income expenditures of individuals only imperfectly. Therefore, still some systems are less distortioning than others. Exactly what we have like just discussed. And now we comes toward a point where we wanted to see that how we can design an income tax system, or how a income tax system is designed. So Pareto, we have talked about a condition which is called like Pareto efficient tax structures, which minimizes these distortions because they kind of maximizes uh, they give optimal tax structures which kind of maximizes the social welfare. So we can say like these are ones who's minimizing the distortions. So now there is a question comes that, is it better to to redistribute income just through a progressive income tax, or by taxing luxury consumed by rich? So basically हम यहाँ पे एक alternative दे रहे हैं कि like which one is better, like if we are applying a progressive income tax to redistribute income, or we are just taxing the luxury goods or luxury items by the rich. But before that, we are taking a situations where we are assuming that there is no saving. So the only source of income of individual is his basis or income, and only tax he is paying is income tax. And in this situation, we are again asking a questions that how progressive should the tax system be? And this question is very important because progressive taxations we talk about when we wanted to redistribute income from rich to poor, kind of like sort of in the tax literature. So now how progressive should the tax system be? How progressive mean like we are talking about that what marginal tax rate we would put, what marginal tax rate we should apply in order to gain the maximum revenue and all sort of things. So basically before that we need to look at a very important topic, or a trade-off which we called, that is a trade-off between efficiency or equity. Efficiency or equity, these are kind of go in different directions. So let's say we have a more progressive tax, then what would be outcomes? We have seen this like in our previous chapter also, that more progressive tax, it means like more marginal tax rate, it would lead to larger deadweight loss. It means larger inefficiency and less the degree of inequality. So more progressive tax हम क्या करते हैं, kind of redistribute करता है income को, redistribute income from high income individual or rich peoples to low income, right? तो वो डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन कर रहा है तो इनइक्वालिटी को कम कर रहा है. सो लेस द डिग्री ऑफ डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन, इनइक्वालिटी कम हो रही है. इट मीन्स इक्विटी इज इम्प्रूविंग. एंड because of large deadweight loss, our inefficiency is kind of increasing. Inefficiency increasing means like efficiency is decreasing. So more progressive taxation has this kind of trade-off where uh, individuals or peoples have to bear with with their deadweight loss in order to achieve a level of equity in the society, we can say. But the question now, we are okay with that no, we wanted to create a equitable society. We wanted to improve the equality, sorry. So we are okay with that. We can uh, compensate for good equality or good equity with some loss in, or deadweight loss with some loss in the efficiency. But for how much deadweight loss one is willing to accept for a given decrease in inequality? This is the question. And to answer this, once again, like, we will go into analyzing a thing. Like, let's suppose there are two kind of a peoples. One is who is supporting more progressive taxes and those who don't. So who are supporting or arguing for the progressive taxation, they are their argument was that deadweight loss, size of the deadweight loss is reducing inequality is small. It means like जो deadweight loss हमारा जो size है, it is less than what we are compensating for inequality. यानी कि equity जो हमारी increase हो रही है, that would kind of compensating for the deadweight loss decrease. So we are saying some kind of this, like the deadweight loss hai, it is very less, and which is compensated by the increased equity. This is what argument they are saying. But now to look for the size of deadweight loss. Now I wanted to look that how the size of deadweight loss depends or how it is defined. So in the previous chapter also we have seen in 19th chapter that size of deadweight loss, it depends on the substitution effect. How? So like you consider, like, if there's a trade-off between labor and consumptions, and let's say these two goods are highly substitutable, then the compensated labor supply curve. Compensated का मतलब होता है, basically we know that labor supply curve is a backward bending curve, right? But this is the part where substitution effect dominates income effect, and this is the part where income effect dominates substitution effect. So in case of compensated labor supply curve, we are considering only this part, the upward part, right? This is called compensated demand curve, where substitution effect dominates the income effect. Yes. So if goods are highly substitutable, then the compensated labor supply curve is very elastic. So and it leading to large deadweight loss from labor or compensation taxation. So what we are saying is that, let's say this one is our like relatively inelastic labor supply curve, and this was our wage before taxes, and after tax our wage reduced to WAT. Okay, and if we are considering just this inelastic wala labor supply curve, we are seeing earlier this was the amount of labor or the working hours that individuals wanted to apply. But after the taxations, when the wages has declined, the supply of labor also declined to L1. Okay, but again, like here only, if we consider कि अगर हमारा जो labor supply curve is more elastic, so now at the same level of wage rate like before taxations, we were somewhere here, and after taxations, like, we are somewhere here. So the fall in labor supply or the working hours is much more in case where we have a elastic labor supply curve. So labor supply curve is more elastic, then workers respond strongly to a fall in net wages by reducing labor supply sharply, and the large reduction in employment we face, and that's kind of lead to large distortions and therefore large deadweight loss. So this is how the size of deadweight loss defined, like more substitution effect, more the size of deadweight loss. So here what we can say, um, more the elasticity of labor supply curve, more the deadweight loss. Okay, and second is like if current consumption and future consumption are highly substitutable, saving behavior is very elastic. Okay, and interest income tax creates large deadweight loss. So from both these points what we are saying that for larger substitution effect there would be larger deadweight loss. Larger substitution effect means more elastic supply curve. More elastic supply curve, more deadweight loss. That's it. Now there are two terms given in our text, that is elasticity optimist and elasticity pessimist. So elasticity optimist are those peoples or those who believe that labor supply and saving elasticities are low, and therefore tax distortions are small or the deadweight loss are small. These are optimistic because they are thinking positive in the sense that labor supply का जो curve है and saving elasticities, their elasticities is very low, so distortion भी कम होगा. On the negative side, on the negative side or the opposite extreme side, there are elasticity pessimist is giving a negative kind of a meaning that those who believes कि elasticity जो है of our labor supply or savings key, it would be remain high and therefore taxes create large distortions and deadweight loss. So these are two simple terms here. And next we will dealing with the questions that ask that why does more progressivity implies more deadweight loss. We have seen कि अभी हमने देखा था कि like more substitution effect or more elastic supply curve was creating more deadweight loss, or also we were saying कि progressive or higher tax rate would be more deadweight loss would be. But now we're seeing we wanted to answer this question why this is happening, why more progressive taxes implying more deadweight loss, right? So one thing was very clear, like what we have studied so far in this lecture, that greater equality चाहिए हमें. It means we need to compensate it with the higher deadweight loss, because we need to trade off between equity and efficiency. So if you want higher equity, then inefficiency will go down. It means deadweight loss will increase. Now there's a time we need to compare. We will compare two tax schedules. One is the proportional flat rate income tax, another one is the progressive flat rate income tax. So proportional फ्लैट रेट समझते हैं पहले. हमारा क्या है? फ्लैट रेट है हमारा कि यहाँ पे हमारे जो मार्जिनल टैक्स रेट है, मार्जिनल टैक्स रेट हमारा सेम हो. इट मीन्स लाइक सेम टैक्स इज अप्लाइड, सेम टैक्स रेट इज अप्लाइड. मार्जिनल टैक्स रेट सेम होगा इन बोथ केसेस. सो वी हैव टू proportional and progressive tax. Both are flat rates here, flat income taxes. मार्जिनल टैक्स होता है हमारा लाइक जो लास्ट यूनिट है हमारे मनी की, या फिर एवरी जो डॉलर और एवरी यूनिट ऑफ रुपी या फिर डॉलर बोल लो, हाउ मच अमाउंट ऑफ दैट डॉलर और द लास्ट रुपीज़ दैट वी अर्न, उसका हमें कितना टैक्स पे करना पड़ रहा है, राइट? सो इफ यू आर सेइंग लाइक 20% इज़ द टैक्स रेट, फ्लैट टैक्स रेट, यानी कि ऑन ईच यूनिट लाइक $1 पे हमें 20 सेंट्स का 20 cents is a tax that we need to pay it at every dollar or every unit of money. Okay, and now the two things which is very important here, that first proportional flat rate और income tax का mean क्या है कि same tax rate is applied to all levels of income, and second average tax rate is also constant. This is very important, like average tax rate. We will like study this in this with the help of an example, that how average tax rate is remaining same in case of proportional taxation. So average tax rate is nothing, it is the fraction of income that we are paying as a tax, right? So like if our total income is 1,000 and we are paying 200 rupees as a tax, so it means we are paying 20%. So average tax rate is 20%, like we are paying 20% of our whole income as a tax. So, and the formula for this average tax rate is total tax paid upon total income into 100. Okay, and in case of progressive flat rate income tax, where marginal tax rate is constant, मतलब here also progressive में, but the only difference between here the proportional progressive is that here average tax rate is increases with income, and sort of that's why we call it progressive taxation, because as our income increases, the proportion or the fraction of our total income we are paying as a tax increases. Okay, so let's say our income is 3 lakh, then we are paying some 8% tax. If our income increases to 10 lakh, then we will pay more, like let's say 16% tax, some sort of it. But if that would be the case of proportional taxation, then the average tax rate would remain same, either 8%, like for all income levels. That is the difference. If we like take an example, and here also one thing keeps in mind, in the progressive taxation में क्या होता है, we kind of divide individuals on in different like income slabs. यहाँ पे we are not going into much like complications of it, like we are not taking much income slabs or taxes. We are just kind of parting income level into two groups, जहाँ पे हमारा y hat is a critical level of income है, below which is the low level of income, यानी कि this is the level of income where we are not applying any here we are not applying any taxes, right, below which, or which is similar to say that there is a negative tax, or government kind of granting them some lump sum amount. And if a person crosses this critical level, then he has to pay a flat rate, or what we are calling as a progressive tax, after which. So here an example. First we will look at the example of proportional tax rate. So let's say we have an income of 3 lakh and proportional tax rate is 20%. Okay, that's 20% tax rate would account for 60,000 हो गया. So if we need to calculate the average tax rate, we would like take the tax paid, which is 60,000, to the total income, that is 3 lakh, into 100, that gives 20% only average tax rate. And now let's say if our income increases to 10 lakh, then average tax rate comes out to be 20. So we have seen that as an income increases from 3 lakh to 10 lakh, our average tax rate remains same, that is 20. And we have seen that in progressive taxations, average tax rate increases with income. And we will look at it through example. Here, let's say this critical level is 2 lakh. It means like basic exemption is 2 lakh. So if somebody is earning 2 lakh, that person don't need to pay any income, don't have to pay any taxes. And if that income is earning more than 2 lakh, then only have to pay income that is more than 2 lakh only. Like, okay, we take an example here, and the flat tax rate is 20% and income is 3 lakh. So 2 lakh pay, there is an exemption. So how much tax left? So we will tax only on the remaining 1 lakh. And to calculate average tax rate, we are like dividing tax paid, that is 20% of 1 lakh, to total amount of income is 3 lakh into 100, that comes out to be 6.7%. And let's say if income increases to 10 lakh, now like 2 lakh is exemption. So after removing that, we would left with 8 lakh. So what tax would be applied on 8 lakh? 20% divided by total income 10 lakh into 100, and this would give us 16%. So we have seen that average tax rate has increased as our income level increases. Now we will look through in a diagram, like this is a 20.1 diagram. So here you would be seeing structures, like this is the critical income level. So on x-axis we have taken income, on y-axis we have tax owed, and this is red line is a proportional tax rate, like from it's going, it has a T1 marginal tax rate. And let's say this is our y hat is the critical level, and below which is we have the negative tax rate. So OZ is the grant that a individual or will get if he has no income, and as the income increases below the this critical level, this grant that individual will receive will also keep on decreasing, but he will get this much of grants, right? But after a person crosses this income level, he has to pay taxes, and that tax is T2, that is marginal tax rate, progressive taxes. So this is what this is showing. And also, like, we can represent it like this here, because it could be seen as a till y hat level. This is a lump sum tax only. Lump sum tax is like the government is paying some lump sum grant to the peoples below this income level, plus after which तो उसका effect same ही है. It is more like a proportional taxation. So we can say progressive taxation is kind of a combination of lump sum tax and a proportional tax, right? Lump sum tax up to a certain level, and after that it's behave like a proportional tax only. Now we have seen that, like, those with income less than y hat, they will receive rebate equal to T2 times the जो उनकी difference है between their income to this critical level. And now we have seen that T2 is like steeper than the this T1 proportional taxes. It means like T2 is greater than T1. But why is it so? Why we have taken progressive tax higher than the proportional taxes? So the reason is because government is expanding on public good baby. Now is paying lump sum grant also if he's like applying the progressive tax structure, and also public expenditure. So this lump sum grant tax is kind of additional expenditure that a government is doing, because if the government was going with the proportional tax structure, government didn't have to give this additional lump sum grant, but now have to give this much. So it is kind of adding additional expenditure to the governments. So government will need additional revenue also to cover for this, and because of this reason our tax rate would be higher in this case. So we have seen that like deadweight loss increases with marginal tax rate. And why is it so? Because deadweight loss depend on substitution effect, and substitution effects related to marginal tax rate. So higher marginal tax rate, it means higher substitution effect, higher deadweight loss. So we can say that therefore more progressive taxes have higher marginal tax rate, right? And thus higher deadweight loss. This is kind of hence proved. Now we will look what will happen to labor supply in these situations. We have seen that कि more progressive tax होगा, so greater likelihood होगी of small labor supply, because it's kind of there's no incentive. It's kind of discourages people to work. But here we will consider two kind of peoples, low income individuals, and on one side we have high income individuals. Now low income individuals, because more progressive taxation, it means like they are kind of getting more rebate only, like lump sum grant would be higher, so they are better off in both situations, substitution effect or income effect. So if they are better off in this situation, so they will want not to do work more, so this will lead to smaller labor supply. And for higher income individuals, their substitution and income effects are kind of going in opposite directions, like they are offsetting. How? Because substitution effect is saying कि laser has become much cheaper because tax rate has increased, so they have no much incentive to work more, because उनको पता है कि ज़्यादा वो काम करेंगे, so like the work has become more expensive, they have to laser have becomes cheaper, so they don't want to work more. So it would kind of encourage them to work less. And on other hand, we have income effect, which is saying कि ना कि just to maintain the same level of standard of living, because disposable income would be less after paying for higher taxes. So in order to maintain the similar living standards, I need to work more, I need to put more labor hours. So income effect will say work more, substitution effect will say work less. So these two effects are kind of offsetting. But mostly in general cases, we see that substitution effect kind of dominates, therefore labor supply often falls. Now next session is a diagrammatic analysis of the deadweight laws of progressive taxation. So here we will compare a progressive and a proportional tax that have the same effect on utility, or kind of we can say कि both will passing through the same indifference curve. So this is the figure. On x-axis we have a laser, on y-axis we have income, and YL is representing for the budget constraint before tax. And let's say this blue line is the budget constraint with the proportional tax. Because हमें पता है proportional tax क्या होता है, like it is kind of a same tax rate, same fraction of income is kind of we kind of taxing individuals of each level, like at different income levels the proportional tax rate or the ratio that they are paying is equal. So there is only a tilt in this budget line towards this, it will like shift it inward or tilt inward. And we are saying that another case is proportional taxations, where we are saying कि this much, like this much is the lump sum grant that a person is getting. Okay, so like इतने income के लिए they don't need have to work. So this is the amount of income they will get even if they don't work. They are just like they have just leisure. After that, they have income tax rate, like they have a marginal tax rate. Progressive marginal tax rate usually is higher, but here in this case we will keep marginal rate accordingly कि हमारा जो ये हमारी budget constraint है, it kind of tangentially pass करे the utility level को, because हमारी utility same रहनी चाहिए. So we will pass or keep our marginal tax rate in such a way that they are passing through this point, or like tangentially is passing through this indifference curve. Okay, so E dash पे हमारा like the person is choosing E dash when it is a proportional taxation, and E when it's progressive taxation. So we can say both have the equal utility, and the difference between the original, like before budget tax, and the after budget tax is giving the revenue earned. So A dash E dash is the revenue in case of a proportional taxation, and this AE is a revenue in case of a progressive taxation. And we can say that our this revenue generated from the proportional taxation is more than the progressive taxation. Because look, if our revenue is higher for proportional, ठीक है, then revenue progressive, इसका मतलब क्या है? Why the revenue is less? क्योंकि the value has been lost. So जो उसका difference होगा revenues का, it will representing the deadweight loss basically, because of the progressive taxation. So we have like seen, or diagrammatically we have seen के deadweight loss of progressive taxation. Now choosing among flat rate tax schedules. So basically in this section we will trying to figure out that, like so far we have seen, like talk about the trade-off. Okay, if we like increase degree of progressivity, it will kind of poor people will gain, so poor individuals gains and richer individuals will lose. This would happen in this case. And And this is also kind of depend on the social welfare function. It is like we have discussed in the starting of this lecture, right? Social welfare function will determine कि optimum level क्या होगा tax structure का. And we also talked about the Rawlsian social welfare functions, which concern about the words of individual because it concern about the equity. तो जो talks about कि जो words of individual है, we need to make it better off. तो जो लो इनकम पीपल हैं या फिर बॉटम ऑफ इनकम डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन है, टॉक्स अबाउट दैम. So for them, welfare is kind of directly, in this case, directly related or dependent on the size of the lump sum grant. So if poor peoples are getting more lump sum grant, it means like welfare is increasing because it is kind of increasing the welfare of the words of individual. And this is what the purpose or what the Rawlsian social welfare function talks about. So, and this would also lead to maximizing the revenue that can be extracted from taxpayers. And usually what we have seen, that empirically also, okay, such tax rates can be very very high, up to 80% or बहुत ज़्यादा. Okay, so basic trade-off in the tax design is that more progressive tax system entails greater deadweight loss, more equalitarian social welfare function, like it plays more weight on the equality, will choose more progressive tax system. It is kind of generalized what we have studied so far. Now there comes a topic, general equilibrium effects. So we will understand it by first analyzing, assuming कि what we actually assumed. पहले हम क्या सोचते थे कि इनकम टैक्स का मतलब क्या है, इट विल अफेक्ट ओनली आफ्टर टैक्स इनकम को. तो जो बिफोर टैक्स वेज है हमारी एंड सैलरीज हैं, दे वुड स्टे द सेम. सो अगर मान लो हमारा टैक्स प्रोग्रेसिव होता है इन दिस केस, तो वो इनइक्वालिटी को डिक्रीज ही करेगा, बिकॉज हम सोच के चल रहे थे कि हमारा जो बिफोर टैक्स वेज है इनकम वो तो सेम रहेगी एंड आफ्टर टैक्स इनकम ही अफेक्ट होगा. तो प्रोग्रेसिव टैक्सेशन है, तो रिच पीपल्स विल गिव मनी एंड द पुअर पीपल्स विल गेन मनी. सो इट काइंड ऑफ रीडिस्ट्रीब्यूटिंग, मेकिंग सोसाइटी मोर इक्विटेबल. सो इनइक्वालिटी विल रिड्यूस. But there are some economists who have argued instead, like they were argued against it, and those arguments were known as general equilibrium effects. तो वो क्या थे कि they they say that taxes can change behavior and that can change before tax income too. Because हमने पहले behavior के बारे में बात नहीं की थी. We didn't talk about कि how the taxes would kind of change the behavior of the individuals before taxes, but they do change the behavior. How? Like for high income peoples, what can happen that because they have more negotiating powers, so they will negotiate for higher salaries to compensate for taxes. So if they can protect their incomes at a higher level, तो जो before tax salary है that would increase, and their after tax income would remain the same, because जो उनको टैक्स देना पड़ेगा इट्स नॉट लाइक फ्रॉम दैट ओरिजिनल इनकम, क्योंकि वो इनकम उनकी इंक्रीज हो चुकी है. सो दे वोंट सफ़र मच फ्रॉम द टैक्सेस. तो इनइक्वालिटी बिफोर इनकम विल इंक्रीज करेगी एक्चुअली, बिकॉज बिफोर टैक्स इनकम हैज़ इंक्रीज्ड, एंड ऑल्सो लाइक दे डोंट हैव टू टेक मच बर्डन ऑफ द टैक्सेस नाउ. तो जो मेन पर्पस था टैक्स का, दैट काइंड ऑफ एवेड उसका कोई इफेक्ट ही नहीं होगा, बिकॉज इनइक्वालिटी हैज़ इंक्रीज्ड बिफोर टैक्स इनकम में. सेकेंड इज लाइक स्किल्ड वर्कर्स कैसे अफेक्ट करेंगे. स्किल्ड वर्कर्स लाइक दे विल वर्क लेस, लाइक उनके पास इंसेंटिव नहीं होगा. इफ दे हैव टू पे मोर टैक्सेस, सो दे वुड फील डीमोटिवेटेड टू वर्क मोर. सो दे वुड बी लाइक आई डोंट वांट टू वर्क एनी मोर. एंड इन्वेस्टमेंट में ऑल्सो फॉल. इन्वेस्टमेंट में कैसे होगा, लाइक इफ़ अवर टैक्सेस इंक्रीजेज, तो जो रिटर्न ऑन इन्वेस्टमेंट है हमारा, दैट वुड फॉल. अगर हमारा जो इन्वेस्टमेंट पे रिटर्न ही फॉल हो जाएगा, सो वी वोंट इन्वेस्ट मच, सो देयर वुड बी लेस इन्वेस्टमेंट इन दैट केस. दिस इज़ हाउ ऑल्सो इफेक्ट. एंड हाउ दिस वुड इफेक्ट फर्दर, कि जो हमारे अनस्किल्ड वर्कर हैं, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल दे डोंट हैव अ मच बार्गेनिंग पावर. उनके पास वो नहीं है कि दे कैन नेगोशिएट फॉर हायर पे. ऑल्सो इफ हमारा जो लाइक वी हैव अ लेस इन्वेस्टमेंट, जिससे क्या होगा कि लाइक अनस्किल्ड वर्कर्स इज बेसिकली work on like physical machines हो गई with physical machines and different kind of other tools which is depend on investment. अगर low investment होगा तो their kind of productivity will fall, तो उनकी wages भी fall हो जाएंगी. So these are the different ways which is happening because of the change in behavior, because of the taxes. So actually what we can see कि rich peoples may protect their incomes, poor may end up earning even less. So actual reduction in inequality is smaller than it appears. तो हमारा जो inequality में what we are thinking कि progressive taxation से we would achieve more equitable society, it is not happening because we were not considering general equilibrium effects, that how taxes can change the behavior of individuals and that how they can change the before tax income. तो वो पूरा like the scenario will change. तो जो inequality में जो reduction आना चाहिए था, that won't be that much, it would be like faded away to a very great extent. So now after all, the very basic principles of efficient progressive taxation that we would derive from the insights that deadweight loss is related to marginal tax rate, elasticity of compensated labor supply curve. वही like you need to just keep in mind this thing कि जो हमारा deadweight loss है, it depends on the substitution effect which depend on the marginal tax rate, and this is kind of depend on the elasticity. So more the elasticity, more the substitution effect, more the marginal tax rate, more the deadweight loss, it that kind of a thing. So basic principles can, so there are three principles which we'll talk about here about the progressive income taxation. So first one is that impose high average tax rate with low marginal tax rate. This is kind of like non-linear tax structure की बात कर रहे हैं हम, non-linear tax structure, progressive tax structure obviously. So just for now mug it up, like keep it in mind कि we impose high average tax rate with low marginal tax rate, and we will see it diagrammatically also later abhi. Second is make as few as people face high marginal tax rate, कि there would be very less few people जो face करेंगे high marginal rate, and ये जो high marginal rates होंगे would be imposed on those for whom the tax rate is less distortionary. These are the three things which you need to keep in mind. Now we will like look into the details, like इनके बारे में थोड़ा सा we will see through the a graph or a diagram. So here which we're talking about. So here we are also like comparing two tax structure. One is progressive flat rate tax, that is linear tax structure. One is the non-linear tax structure. This is what we're talking about. यहाँ पे देखो like this is our linear progressive tax जो हम like common जो हम देखते आ रहे थे, and this is the non-linear tax rate. So you can see okay, so like you can see कि let me make it again. Then okay, so this is, you can see कि like this part B2C, it's very steeper than that, which is showing high marginal tax rate. ठीक है, and after C, after this level, marginal tax rate has decreased but the average tax rate would increase. So यहाँ पे like BC तक they have high marginal tax rate. Beyond C, average tax rate would increase, then the marginal tax rate will fall, but this would be much larger. Okay, and OB is basically a lump sum grant that is given to someone who doesn't work and has no other source of income, and this grant phase out as income rises. So in नॉन लीनियर के केस में लाइक दिस इज द ग्रांट जो मिल रही है, ठीक है, एंड दिस विल लाइक जैसे इनकम मिलती जाएगी तो इट इज़ काइंड ऑफ कम होती जा रही है, फेज आउट होती जा रही है, एंड आफ्टर अ पॉइंट उसके बाद लाइक person will not get grant simply, ठीक है. So this is the case which we talk about. So non-linear tax structure will be able to increase the amount of redistribution without increasing the deadweight laws associated with the tax. So why we are saying like non-linear tax, because government could collect more revenue with less distortions. बिकॉज लेस डिस्टॉर्शंस क्यों है, क्योंकि मार्जिनल टैक्स रेट इज़ लेस, ठीक है, एवरेज टैक्स रेवेन्यू इज़ मोर. इट मीन्स एवरेज टैक्स रेवेन्यू इज़ मोर फॉर हाई इनकम इंडिविजुअल्स. that will result in high revenue, right? High revenue will generate, and marginal tax revenue would be less, and marginal tax revenue would be higher for very small fraction of peoples who have a low income. तो जो it would be very less distortionary. So with very less distortions we can actually collect more revenue, and that's why we are saying that like non-linear tax structure is able to increase the amount of redistributions without increasing the deadweight loss associated with the tax. And then next we will talk about lowering tax rates for the rich. So we will like understand this through in a graph. So here on x-axis we have laser and y-axis we have consumptions, and this is our like before tax constraint, budget constraint, and this is after budget tax constraint, this line. So after tax, like before any fall in marginal tax revenue, individuals in high income group were choosing point E, that is revenue. So this was the point which individuals were choosing, and the revenue was the difference in this before and after tax budget constraint, that is AE. Okay, and now we are assuming that marginal tax rate has fallen to 0. मार्जिनल टैक्स रेट फॉल हो गया, इट मीन्स कि जो बजट कंस्ट्रेंट है उसका स्लो वुड बी सेम एज द बिफोर टैक्स, एंड डॉटेड लाइन वुड रिप्रेजेंट द न्यू बजट कंस्ट्रेंट. सो दिस बजट कंस्ट्रेंट CE, this dotted line would represent the new budget constraint, and this would be parallel to this before tax budget constraint. And you can see like यहाँ पे like the individual is choosing E dash point which is on a higher IC, so which is representing that individuals now has become better off because now is in a higher utility curve, and the difference between this their budget line and the before tax budget line would represent the revenue, which is A dash E dash, and you can see कि A dash E dash is actually equal to AE. So there is no change in revenue is like very similar, but individuals get kind of becomes better off. So revenue is same, and plus individual has become better off. Okay, so this is the conclusion we get, that lowering marginal tax rate for upper income individuals may improve the welfare of the group without reducing government revenue. Here, lowering marginal tax revenue beyond E to 0 makes individual better off but has no effect on revenue. So just learn this. This is what we have like learned so far. And basically ये जो income level था, this was the lump sum kind, like इस level तक like there was no taxations, like grant मिल रही थी. So that's why we have started the budget line from here, E point से, right? So that's it for this lecture. Thank you very much. So if you like this video, please do subscribe the channels and comment how you find this video. Was it useful? So like it motivates me to bring more such videos and more useful content for you. Thank